Now let's welcome Mr. Gonzales to the show. He is an assistant at Texas Tech University with recruiting and retaining first-generation and underrepresented students. He teaches there, and we thank you so much for joining us today. Mr. Gonzales, welcome to America's Morning News.
Good morning, General. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Thank you.
I tell you, it's been in the news a lot in the last 2 weeks. Anybody that turns on the TV or the radio hears about all the controversy swirling over at the CIA. And I guess we could first start talking about what this might do to morale if it already hasn't done something to morale over there. And that includes Leon Panetta, the CIA director. He's all upset by this.
Well, let me just say that I have a great deal of respect for General Holder. But every prosecutor has a great deal of discretion in terms of prosecuting cases. And we must never lose sight of the fact that, for 99% of the work of the CIA has been extraordinary and exemplary. And we talk about individuals who risked their physical lives. Now they've been placed in legal jeopardy by virtue of their actions simply to protect America. And we ought to remember that these are heroes, and they should be treated as heroes, and for the most part, not as criminals. So I think that's a very important point. I've talked to friends of mine in the CIA, and there is a great deal of concern. People are scared about taking actions that may otherwise be legal, but if in any way controversial, they're just not going to do it. Why risk it?
Here's what I see happening. I see that a lot of the people who are fighting this war on terrorism are out on the battlefields. They're going to decide to take no prisoners whatsoever, and they're going to kill every suspected al-Qaeda person that they can get a hold of, rather than risk jeopardy, legal jeopardy, by bringing them back and possibly questioning them in order to get intelligence that we are vitally going to need in the future.
Well, of course, we can't encourage that. We can't, if someone surrenders on the battlefield, you can't just kill them. That would be a violation of the laws of war. But you're right. It does sort of create a perverse incentive. And I think we need to be very, very careful about the road that we're traveling here.
Well, President Obama said, as we all know, that we wanted to look forward in this country. Those were his exact words, not become entangled in a debate over the past practices of the war on terror. And yet Eric Holder, I guess, makes this decision on his own to go against the initial wishes of Barack Obama, although he's not calling it the war on terror anymore. So maybe that's how they're getting away with it. What do you think about an attorney general taking action basically on his own in this case, if in fact we're to believe what we're reading?
Well, I don't know what happened here, John. That's the thing that Americans need to understand. I think that the Attorney General would have made this decision on his own, and I think as the Chief Prosecutor of the United States, he should make the decision on his own based on the facts, and then inform the White House this was what he had decided to do. The White House, the President, as the chief law enforcement officer in our unitary system of government, could overrule the Attorney General. There would be political consequences any time a president does that. But I suspect that what happened here, this wasn't a decision by the Department of Justice, by the Attorney General, and who then informed the White House this was his decision. Again, what I worry about is a prosecutor does have a great deal of discretion here. The thing that I think is important for the American people to understand, it's my understanding that Eric Holder is looking at conduct that goes beyond the instructions given by the Department of Justice. We're talking about the 1% of the actors who went beyond the legal limits prescribed by the lawyers at the Department of Justice. And you have to ask yourself, listen, we obviously worked very, very hard in the Bush administration to establish ground rules, to establish parameters about how to deal with terrorists. And because we are a nation of laws, and if people go beyond that, I think it is legitimate to question, to examine that conduct, to ensure that people are held accountable for the actions that they take, even if it's in actions in prosecuting the war on terror and trying to protect America.
Who's going to hold Attorney General Eric Holder accountable if there's another 9/11, God forbid, on his watch because we're missing valuable intelligence information?
Well, of course, all cabinet officials are accountable to the American people. They're certainly accountable to the congressional oversight committees to which they report to, and obviously they're accountable to the President of the United States. They're accountable to history. And so we'll have to wait and see what happens here as a result of this decision. And again, it very well may be that the that Prosecutor John Durham is going to look at this and decide that there is no actionable conduct here. There's not enough evidence to warrant a prosecution. But again, just the mere mention that there's a possible investigation means that even those who engage in lawful conduct, as long as they had any kind of relationship or in any way involved in these interrogations, you have to think that they'd want to think about getting a lawyer.
Mr. Gonzales, we're hearing a few of the pundits out there suggesting that the Obama administration did this last week to shift public opinion away from the health care debate. Do you agree with that?
I don't know that. I wasn't in the White House. I will say this. Anyone who politicizes these activities, the interrogations that were conducted for the most part to protect our country, anyone who politicizes this conduct should be condemned on both sides as far as I'm concerned, because this is about the national security of our country. This should not be politicized.
Sir, you were the first Hispanic and Mexican-American to ever serve as the United States Attorney General. I remember reporting here in Washington when your name was floated about to become a Supreme Court nominee yourself. Your thoughts on Sonia Sotomayor becoming the first Hispanic on the bench?
I think that obviously it's historic for our country. It's historic for our court. Obviously a very proud occasion for Ms. Sotomayor and her family and friends. But at the end of the day, I've always maintained this. There is no such thing as Hispanic justice or African American justice or white justice. There is this blind justice in America, and that's the way I think most Americans want it.
I think we all hope that that is the case indeed. Thank you so much, Mr. Gonzales. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, former Attorney General Alberto Gonzales under President George W. Bush, again now a visiting professor at Texas Tech University, and he assists Texas Tech University with recruiting and retaining first-generation and underrepresented students.